As the crow flies on the Vance Crow podcast.
Chris Niemann, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
So you are a regional trucker that is not around the house very often. You are running all over delivering supplies. And since this coronavirus stuff hit, I have been seeing your Facebook posts where you have talked about the challenges of being a truck driver as rest stops and things are getting shut down. So first, why don't you give a little background? What's going on out there right now in the world of a trucker?
Well, it's kind of crazy right now. We got stuff all over the place. Me personally, I haul livestock. I haul pigs. Got a lot of friends that are kind of on the boundaries of a little bit of hauling everything too. So I'm in the mix of a lot of things, and I like to kind of keep a lookout for everybody, to kind of keep a track of where things are and what's going on as well. And so that's where I fell into this place with this. Everything kind of going chaotic. They've lifted hours of service on some people, but not others. They've shut down rest stops. They've changed a lot of stuff on us. And as regulated as we are, it's real hard to kind of keep track of where all of that stuff falls, for what individual. So for me personally, running livestock, they've lifted the hours of service on us on livestock. And so I guess technically you could say that we can run whatever we want.
And so for people that aren't involved in trucking, that means you're normally allowed to run a certain number of hours in a given day. And now they're saying, hey, we are not putting those restrictions on you anymore.
Right. We are typically allowed to run 11 hours of drive time within a 14-hour day, which means we've got 14 hours to run 11 hours plus a mandatory 30-minute break inside of that 11 hours. And so within those 14 hours, that also accounts for load time, unload time, stopping for fuel, stopping to, normal human necessities, as you may. But once we run out of 14 hours, we're done. So if let's just say we sit at a dock for 5 hours, and there's nothing out of the ordinary of that. So that 5 hours, you take that off of your 14, you're now left with 9. Well, but wait a minute, I've got 11 hours that I can drive. No, you've got 14 hours of a day. You now have 9 hours to drive, plus a mandatory 30-minute break in there. So you've got 8.5 hours left to drive. Well, now that they've lifted these restrictions from us, they did it because there is such a need for product. You need livestock for food. You can't get the food to the store if you don't have the livestock brought in for slaughter. And so that's where they've lifted us for livestock hauling. So now if we sit at a dock for, let's just say 8 hours, which that's not normal for livestock. Usually livestock moves, but freight haulers can sit at a dock I've got a couple guys that have complained about sitting at a dock for almost 36 hours. You'll sit at a dock waiting to get loaded, and now you can now take off and run however you feel. And so if you sit at a dock for 6 hours off of your 14, there is no 14 no more. You run. And that's why they lift these restrictions in order to get products where they need to be. And that's what gets real frustrating as a truck driver, that we are one of the most heavily regulated industries there is. I mean, it's the book we have, the Bible is a coloring book compared to the book we have to live by. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's just the number of pages. I wish I had the book with me. I keep it in my truck. That's my Bible in the truck. But it's ridiculous, the regulations that we have. And so that's where a lot of truck drivers get frustrated. In a time of need, in a time of a crisis like we're in right now for getting products to the store, all of a sudden these regulations aren't needed all of a sudden. Well, why were they needed in the first place? So it's a...
Well, I was going to jump in. One of the things that you said that really struck me, or I don't know, somebody posted that was around you, is that because of the way that they don't allow dine-in at restaurants anymore, right? So now you got a trucker that's trying to eat and keep on the road, but because they can't go into a restaurant and they can't pull up into the drive-through because they got a big semi, now they're not able to eat. What's going on out there with things like that?
That's been the crazy part. Like when they lift hours of service and stuff on us for like Katrina and other natural disasters, we've still got a place to stop and eat. A lot of guys take food with them on the road, but let's be honest, after a week, you can't eat mama's home cooked meal, heat it up in the microwave for the 6th time already this week. The food situation has become very chaotic in the simple fact that common sense has gone out the door. we don't really like McDonald's and Burger King every night, but now we're kind of down to just that, the fast food restaurants where they've got drive-throughs. But at the same time, you go park your semi literally right across the curb, and these people don't understand you just came out of a semi, and if you walk up to the window, they can't serve you. That's against their code of conduct, which I understand. You can't serve somebody that comes up to a window. You might get robbed. But at the same time, we're trying to do our job. We just want a meal and get going down the road, and we can't even do that. So that's become very, very chaotic. And at the same time, it's kind of become patriotic too, in a few senses. There's become a lot of ma and pa restaurants that have kind of gone by the wayside because they're kind of skipped over for being small or not enough room to park a truck. Well, now because there's not so much traffic, there's more room to get trucks in and out of these smaller places. And so they're posting on Facebook left and right, not only trying to get business, but trying to help the truckers too, that, park here or park there. We've had a few smaller restaurants that have said there's parking at our local auditorium in town. Please park there. Call this number. Order your food. We've got a guy that will deliver it to you. We're a half a mile into town.
That's great.
But there's no room to get your truck, and we apologize for that. But we're here for you. Just call us. Tell us what you want. Pay for it over the phone or cash when we get there, and we will deliver it to you. And so that's come around to a sense of, these places never did delivery before. You never had grandma's fried chicken from downtown delivering anywhere. And so now they're reaching out to us to try and help us. And for a trucker coming from us, that's huge. We don't have to do McDonald's and Burger King every day. We get an actual home cooked meal that we're used to sitting down and eating. The other funny part about this whole not being able to dine in sort of thing, from the hours of service side of things, if you are in your truck, you are still on duty. If you get out of your truck, you can put yourself off duty. And so that's how you take, like your 30-minute break would be off duty. But now you got to sit in your truck to eat. You got to sit in your truck to do everything because you have nowhere to go.
Oh.
So technically your hours of service never stop. It gets, and there again, it falls into a big gray area of what is and what isn't. And the hardest part with a truck driver when it comes to what is and what isn't is that my idea of what isn't is not the idea of what isn't to an officer. And the biggest words in that Bible that we carry is officer's discretion. Well, that's a huge gray area right there.
Yeah, I think that this whole thing is going to swing the world into some really weird places because on the one hand, Trump, for whatever criticisms people have of Trump, one of the things that he did right was he said, we're going to strip off the regulations from all kinds of industries, whether it's pharmaceuticals or truck drivers or any of these things. And that allows capitalism to bring its full weight on this. But then on the other hand, you have the most restrictive regulations we've ever had in the history of maybe our country, where, I'm on lockdown. Starting tomorrow, if I'm out of my house, it is a misdemeanor crime, meaning that I could serve up to a year in prison and $2,000.
Right.
So we're stripping off regulations on one hand, but we're also wrenching down.
And it's a scary thought. It's kind of creepy when you think about it because, I'm not saying that I know you that well, but I'm sure you're probably going to stay in your house and do as you're told, as most of the country should, given this whole virus thing. But at the same time, it plays a tricky spot as to what do you mean by forced to stay home, and how long will this hand be over the top of us to tell us what to do? And so that's where, coming from the truck driver side again, it gets a little scary too of when are they going to tell us to stay home? Because, on one hand, you can't. Like, it's just impossible. The whole country would fall apart. There'd be mass chaos beyond anything. Yes. I'm sure you've seen the posts on Facebook, of how long certain areas can survive without a truck. Like grocery stores would be empty in 3 days, I think it was. Grocery stores would be empty. I think we've proven that fact wrong. I think most grocery stores are empty in 12 hours at this point.
And when those things were running around, those memes about how much truckers are needed, and it all seems so passé, right? It always was like, yeah, New York would run out of food, but when will this ever happen?
Right.
And then bang,
here we are.
Even a week ago, if you had described this is the way we think the world is going to go, most people would be like, no, you're out of your mind. No way that happens.
I argued that, and I don't know, maybe I might seem a little hard-headed on the subject, and maybe being out here in rural Nebraska, and maybe I don't quite see it as much, but we've got plenty of cases here in Nebraska of this virus confirmed, everything. But it hasn't hit me yet. I guess this is going to be one of those things where it's going to take affecting somebody I love or I care about in order to finally hit me in the face as to, wow, this is so real. But for right now, it's like I'm just trying to keep up with the rest of the world and do my job and make the money I can make for now to make sure my bills are paid, because right now the biggest confusion that a lot of us have, especially us that are out on the road, where we don't see it so much. We shake hands with everybody we meet. I mean,
is that right? You're still shaking hands?
Absolutely. It's crazy. Where we go, like nobody even thinks twice about it. It's just I think it's the industry that we're in. You help a guy at a truck stop. I had just a few days ago, I had a guy, he ran his power inverter over the weekend. He had started the truck on Saturday. It ran. He ran his power inverter. He turned on his crock pot, made dinner, shut the truck down because it was beautiful. It was like 70 degrees outside. So he shut the truck down. There's no point in running it. He forgot to shut off his power inverter. Got up in the middle of the night, Sunday night into Monday, because this cold front came through and it was about 35 degrees outside. Went to go start the truck and all he got was a bunch of clicks out of it. Well, I just pulled in bobtail and he came up to me to ask if I could jump start him. And, well, yeah, sure, no problem. I mean, I'm not going to leave a guy freezing. So, yeah, no problem. Went over, hooked up the jumper cables. We sat and talked for about half an hour while it charged up. Truck fired right up, shook hands, said thanks a lot, have a great day. He offered to buy me breakfast. Never thought anything of it. And honestly, as soon as we got done, I didn't even go inside and run inside to go wash my hands right away. A guy just doesn't think about it. It's kind of a brotherhood, sisterhood type of thing. And a guy just doesn't feel that, well, that guy's infected, I better go wash my hands. It hasn't hit us yet, is what I'm trying to say, and until somebody I know, I'm not going to think twice about it. I do wash my hands. Well, I wash them normally after I go to the bathroom because that's what a normal human being should do. I mean, that's common sense. But as far as like excessive washing and stuff like that, I would probably say that I fall in the, oops, I don't really do it any more than I used to.
I mean, the other day I was looking down at my hands and I was like, man, for whatever reason, my hands feel like I'm back living in Africa because I used to be a Peace Corps volunteer, right? And then I realized, oh, it's because I'm actually giving myself like burns on my hands. And when I was in Africa, I used to use lye soap, so it was chemical burns. Now it's just, and now I have to wonder, like, am I washing my hands too much now, or was I not washing my hands enough before? I don't know the answer to that.
And that's for what I do, with hauling hogs and stuff like that. I always said if I'm going to catch something, it's going to be from inside that trailer a heck of a lot sooner than it's going to be from somebody. But for what I do and what I've always done, I mean, I grew up on a farm. I've done mechanics, farm work, been around livestock all my life. To me, it's almost like my hands have got almost a layer to them that don't allow stuff to penetrate. I'm not going to get it from my hands. And I think the most important thing is as long as you keep your hands away from your mouth, where or a wound or a cut or something, I think you're going to be a lot better off. By all means, I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to say that's how it's going to happen, but that's kind of more of where my head is,
So speaking of where your head is, one of the questions I had about that I wanted to talk about was rest areas are being shut down. And so this means that, one, you don't have a place to go to the bathroom and get up and stretch, but then two, sleeping arrangements are getting messed up. Tell me about that, because that's got to really mess with a truck driver's head.
That it does, and especially for Nebraska. Pennsylvania was another one that shut down all of theirs, and after quite a bit of, I guess you could say, online and phone call rioting, they opened theirs back up as well. But as far as Nebraska, going back to our logbook situation where you've got 11 hours of drive time, it takes almost 8 to drive across the state of Nebraska. So when you shut down every rest area in between, yes, we do have truck stops in between then, but middle of the night, they're packed. I mean, they're packed on a normal Tuesday evening. And so to take away those rest areas where you can still fit anywhere from 12 to, I think we've got a couple of the newer ones where they built in the back side of it, truck parking. I think you can get about 40 or 50 trucks back there. But for the most part, they're the old fashioned rest areas where you can probably fit about 10 to 12 trucks right there along the highway. But you take that away and try and cram us into truck stops even more, and it doesn't work. And so then, as a trucker, you move to the next one. I'll look for a spot at the next one. I got another hour left on my book. I'll go to the next one. Next rest area is closed. Next truck stops crammed full. You can't fit anywhere safely or without parking somebody else in. Well, I'll make it to the next one. We'll try that one. Well, then you make it to the next one. Now you're over on your logbook. Technically, you're red flag. Technically, you're out of hours, and that's a huge no-no. That's you get caught with that, and DOT will put you 10 hours out of service. They'll make up your 10 hours of sleep time really fast. And so by not having a place to park, then guys start resorting to on and off ramps. Well, we all know that that's not safe. Somebody comes flying into an off ramp too fast, too hard. Well, you're going to be the one that's there to get hit. And so us drivers, we don't like doing it. I mean, you can't find a truck driver out there that enjoys sleeping on an off ramp. Plus the noise, we sleep through a lot of noise. It's just part of the job. You get used to it, but it's a little different when you got another semi that comes blowing by you at 30 mile an hour on an off ramp, coming to a stop sign. You kind of wake up to that. So you don't get good sleep there either. You're sitting crooked. That's got to be my biggest pet peeve. Sitting at an angle on an off ramp. You don't sleep well when you lay downhill. It just doesn't work so well. But it's created a lot of mess for guys that are used to, traveling across Nebraska, across I-80. Well, I know I can get to, 314 is Grand Island, and I know that there's a truck stop there, but it's usually full at, say 2 o'clock in the morning. But I know that there's a rest stop, 20 minutes after that. My logbook's got plenty of time to get there. And then that driver gets there, and it ain't available. Gates are closed, cones are across it. Next rest area isn't for another hour and a half. Well, you only got 20 minutes left on your book because you had planned on it. There was no announcement by NDOT. There was nothing on their digital reader boards on the interstate about rest areas closed. They just closed. But then you drive past them in the day and they were open. Well, if you're traveling east and you're headed towards Omaha and you see all these rest areas open, great. Okay, you get done in Omaha and you're ready to head west back across Nebraska, and now all of a sudden they're closed. It created a little bit of panic for guys, a lot of uncertainty for drivers. And most certainly it was one of those of, well, what's going to happen to me if I get caught? And that's the worst thing. The worst thing a truck driver can blow a motor, you can blow a transmission, you can drop a rear end. It's all fixable. To us, the worst thing that can possibly happen is DOT catching us and putting us 10 hours out of service. One, that goes on your record. Two, you're stuck right where you're at for 10 hours for really no reason at all besides you went over your logbook trying to find a rest stop. And so it's a fear, it really is. And then that looks bad on us as a driver too. And so not having these rest areas not only creates uncertainty for us and unsafety or an unsecure stop for us, but it also overpacks, I guess you could say, the truck stops that we do have. That leads to arguments, fights, everything else you can think of when two guys, park each other in.
What's the mood among truckers around coronavirus? Is this like exciting opportunity, there's money to be made, or is it scary, hey, we might get sick, things might get shut down?
From the guys that I talk to, and like I said, I've got guys that run flatbed, reefer, dry van, bulk hopper, and then myself pulling, pot. Everybody is like 50-50, it seems. There's a lot of guys that are excited about this. And when just to clarify, when I say guys, I mean girls too. There's a lot of guys that are excited about this, that, the opportunity that's there, especially with these hours of service, lifted. A lot of us, I'll admit I've run 2.5, 3 days nonstop. Just because that's how it works out. You get stuck in a line, but you had a dock time, you got a shoot time, you got to go. I sleep when I get tired. That's the fun of trucking. That's the way it used to be. You sleep when you get tired and you run when you run. And so for a lot of these guys that have that mentality and that can do that, we're loving it because the money's there. You can run as many miles as you want. I'm particularly paid by the load, but most guys are paid by the mile. And so to be able to cram more miles into a day, well, that's awesome. That's great. I don't have to stop like I used to. And so a lot of guys are really excited and enjoying the moment that we have. And at the same time, there's a little bit of a morale boost with trucks. We need you. We're lifting these.
America knows that right now.
Right. And so kind of for a little bit, we kind of throw on our little, not all heroes wear capes, trucker hat, and hammer down in the fast lane and let the coal roll, and we enjoy it. The other half of us the other half of our moral mentality is, how long is this going to last before they tell us to go home and park it? And at that point, that's where the scary part really comes in, and not so much scary because we're out of a job, but scary because we know what's going to happen to this country when those trucks do stop.
Yeah, man, I can't imagine that they're going to tell you guys to shut off. But a week ago, I wouldn't have said that either. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A week ago, I wouldn't have thought that they're going to tell you to stay home in your house and don't do nothing, So it's a 50-50. It's scary, but we're excited. And so just, I guess, there's a lot of people say that there's two different types of truck drivers, and we say it too. You got your steering wheel holders that drive your big plastic trucks, and we like to pick on them guys because they drive Volvos and Freightliners, and we like to pick on them. And then you got guys that run, the heart of the country, the livestock, the flatbed, the manly work that them door slammers can't do. And so it's a lot of fun now when we're more grouped together than we ever have been, because we're all after the same mission to try and keep everybody alive. And we try not to put too big of a ego around us, but at the same time we like to kind of walk around and strut our stuff a little bit. You don't get your toilet paper unless we show up. You don't get your food unless we show up. So it's nice to see that for once the country is starting to recognize. I don't want to say that they hardly recognize at all the potential and the impact that trucks have, but I think they're starting to. It's slowly coming around that, that truck needs to get there, or, we got no toilet paper, which I think everybody's got 100 rolls of toilet paper sitting around right now, but it's kind of fun.
I can tell you. So, I mean,
I fell in the don't worry about it for now, we'll get it later thing, and now I'm going, man, maybe we should have done it.
I had made a mistake maybe, I don't know, a year ago, that I accidentally bought cases of toilet paper instead of just individual rolls. So right. I just happened to be stocked up, but it won't last forever.
It won't last, yes.
So my last question, and I've been asking everybody this because I'm very interested to kind of get it written down in a way. What do you think the world looks like in 2 weeks from today?
You're asking that far away? Holy cow. Usually I'd say let's talk about years from now, but 2 weeks is a long ways out. Is this an open-ended question?
Anything you want to talk about? Yeah. For you, your family, for your industry, whatever.
Well, I guess we can kind of skip around through that. I think industry-wise, I think we'll still be moving. I think rates are going to fluctuate so much that guys are going to start changing what they do. Flatbed guys that thought that's all they're ever going to pull aren't going to pull flatbed anymore, because trying to move steel coils around ain't going to be as productive as hooking up to a dry van or a reefer to move normal goods. I think a lot of guys are gonna pull the fifth wheel on a lot of trailers they've been hauling for years, and they're gonna switch to a dry van and a reefer, just for the fact of they need to get it moved, and they're gonna pay a premium for it. Personally, I see myself, I'll stay on the pot and keep hauling livestock, because the dry vans and the reefers aren't going to get filled with air. You got to have animals to fill them. So I think that's how the industry side of things are going to go, and there's going to be an opportunity for a lot of guys to make some really good money coming up. As far as family goes, with us being out here in rural Nebraska, it's I don't know, we're kind of secluded the way that it is, and so
as long as you don't keep shaking people's hands.
Well, yeah, as long as I don't shake people's hands and keep coming home with it, But I think I want to say we're mentally okay. We're physically set up to handle a couple of weeks of not going to the store at all. And if we got to Davy Crockett it for a while, I guess we'll grab the 22 and go shoot squirrels and raccoons for a while, and live off of that if it comes down to it. But I think as long as countrywide, across the nation, I think as long as we keep our infrastructure solid, keep our power, I think keep our power grid and our telecommunications, our networking alive, I think everybody will come out of it just fine.
Amen.
You start dropping power grids or internet service, and people are going to lose their mind, and it will. I never got into the whole zombie apocalypse thing. Maybe I should a little bit more after this, but I think you start dropping power grids and internet connections, and I think it's going to turn into something like that. Like you see in the movies. It's just the zombies are going to be the people without power or internet, because they're going to lose their minds of what to do with life, because nobody knows what board games are or candlelight or anything anymore. Everything's internet. Even what we're doing right now, internet.
It's the lifeblood. Yeah.
It is. It really is. And I hate feeling that. I hate feeling that way of that it needs to be, but let's be honest, that's the way that everybody got their information about the virus even. If everybody wouldn't have had a national TV source and Facebook and the internet and Twitter, 90% of this country wouldn't have a clue what's going on.
That's right. If you had to only get your news by either radio or newspaper, it would be a lot slower moving. So we should probably give a shout out to our mutual friend Kent Blunier. And just real quick, if people wanted to follow along with what you're doing, what you're seeing out in the world, what's the best way for them to understand what the world of a trucker is right now?
Well, I think for me personally, I don't really have like a trucker page per se that I really post to myself. I mean, it's just my personal one. But there's a lot of trucker pages out there. Truck Life is one of them. Honestly, if you typed in the search on Facebook just for truckers, they'd come up with probably about 30 pages. Pick 3 of the ones that have the highest volume on them and follow along, and that would be about the easiest way to see not only the stuff we laugh at, but the stuff we kind of beat our head against the wall about, and stuff that we gripe at. And I think just following some of them pages would kind of change a lot of people's aspect on what a truck driver goes through, not just dock time and wait time and trying to find a place to eat and sleep, but traffic, the mentality. That is one thing I guess I could touch on just real quick, that I could say I kind of appreciate from most traffic out there right now. People driving we call them four-wheelers, not the ATV, but just a simple car. We call them four-wheelers. For some reason, and I think it's pretty obvious why, but for some reason, we've been getting flipped off a little bit less. We've been getting honked at a little bit less. Whether they like it or not, we are not entitled to have room to merge onto an interstate, but all of a sudden, magically, we're having room to merge onto an interstate.
Good, man. That's great to hear.
It's seeing the rest of the country come around, and even just in our small little area here where I run from Nebraska to Minnesota to Iowa, just in our area, seeing the people come out and support us, and then being able to hear and see all these posts and tags that I get tagged in on Facebook and stuff of, like I said, the Ma and Pa restaurants willing to deliver to the edge of town where they know we can get to that they don't normally do. People inviting trucks, hey, we've got this co-op and we can't come into work for the next 2 weeks. There's room to park 100 trucks. By all means, it's open. You guys pull in and park there. Please, sleep there. It's safe. It's secure. There's plenty of lighting. Park there. Stuff that places like that wouldn't allow us to park. I mean, there's signs everywhere that say no truck parking. I mean, left and right. Everywhere you turn and you see a nice big parking lot and you think, great, I can sleep there. Big old sign out on the edge, no truck parking. So a lot of those are coming down, and it's kind of nice to see.
Chris, we're going to wrap up here, but I want you to know that I am very interested in how things go with you. So I hope we can stay in touch, and I'll keep writing people. And then when all this coronavirus is done, when you make a trip to St. Louis, I want you sitting right across the table. Let's do a long interview, talk about what you see in the world.
No problem. I might even make a special trip out of it when they say you can come out of the house. Maybe we can let people in, and I'll come down and visit.
That'd be great, brother. I'd love it. Stay safe out there, man.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. I appreciate it. You have
Absolutely.
A good one.